We were sitting around at my place. You know, we already had the systems. We had built them from the ground up. We had dealt with all the system conflicts through '95 into '96. I remember when I got the first Miro DC-1 board, and it was an ISA board, and we just like slapped it in and captured some different movies, you know, and watched them back, and it was great. And the excitement of being able to finally do nonlinear editing at home. And it was a nice progression to, you know, we had that element of it, and then we knew we could borrow cameras and stuff from other people that we knew, so it was like the makings of a movie, you know, right there.
And I was talking to Joe Wyson, I remember at a party. It was an art show, an art gallery, and I told him, we're gonna make a movie, Lance and I are gonna make a movie. He was like, oh, cool, what's it about? And we were saying, oh, I think it's gonna be a horror movie, but we don't quite know yet what we're gonna do. And he brought up the Jersey Devil concept. The
Pine Barrens was an excellent location. The whole mythology behind the Jersey Devil, all those things fit together very well.
Yeah. By December, we had the story, the first, second, third act really well worked out. And I remember when we came up with the ending, you know, that idea of going into narrative, that was a really exciting moment.
We had a variety of different people we worked with, some people who were a little more skilled than others. They were all friends and family. Some had acted before. Many of them had not. In fact, they don't do anything close to what they portray in the film. So it would really depend on their skill level. And some people would read dialogue for us that we had written, and other people we would set up a list of different things that their character knew about the case. And we would go from there. And then we'd tell them, no matter what, we don't stop. You know, so then we would catch those awkward pauses and those moments where people were reflecting and trying to decide how they were going to answer the questions that we were presenting them with. So in the end, I think that, along with a lot of time in post, created very realistic performances.
Well, I remember we were really intrigued by the whole sort of 1970s, very heavy-handed documentaries, like, you know, the search for Bigfoot type deal. And so we actually were at a video store and we were renting Manson. That was the actual documentary we were looking at, and Jim Seward was looking for another movie. He was in the documentary section. We didn't really know him at that point. He was a friend of Lance's brother. And we were driving home and we were thinking, okay, who are we going to have this character to play the lead in our movie? And you were like, hey, what about that guy in the video store, my brother's friend? It's like, yeah, he's got a good look. And we didn't remember his name, we didn't know his name, but we knew he worked at a bookstore in town. So we actually went to the bookstore, and he was working. And we said, hey, how's it going? And he was like, oh, hey. And we asked him, hey, you want to be in a movie? And he was like, yeah, okay, fine. We're like, great, write your name or number down on this card, and we'll give you a call. And that's how we found out his name was Jim Seward. And so we didn't really know him, and we told him when the first shoot was going to be. And then we were basically in character as Stephen Avalos and Lucas Weiler, the two sort of nutty hosts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we created a very a dynamic in that sense that we're all going out into the woods, and it's very free. You know, I mean, we have all the gear. We go deep into the Pine Barrens, and Jim doesn't know us at all. We know Ryan from a long time ago, and then Stefan and I know each other, and we all have cameras. We're all shooting. We're all working through these scenes. And in a lot of ways, you know, we would be there directing the scene and feeding certain lines that we wanted at times, making sure we got the points that we wanted to get across. And it was very, very cold when we shot those 4 days in the woods. Actually, I think it was like 14 degrees. We were using consumer-graded equipment, and we would have to keep the stuff in our pockets until we were ready to shoot with it, because it would get so cold we were afraid that the cameras would start to malfunction. But actually they held up very well. Ironically, the 8mm Olympus camera that we were using worked like a champ, and we used a Sony VX1000 and a JVC single chip small camera, and they all did very well out there. And then we run mics right into the camera, and we'd hold the mics, and we had a really interesting way of, like, the actual miking for the scenes would be us talking like this and then holding the mic to the other person. So we were extensively acting in the film, directing the film, shooting the film, and doing the sound. So all of us were like cameramen and sound men at the same time. It was very surreal. One of the main principal lighting sources that we used was Chinese lanterns. It allowed us to get close to somebody without too much heat. or intensity. They were very nice soft sources of light, and we would use different types of practical bulbs within them. So you could actually reach up and you could put a 250 watt bulb in, or a 100 watt bulb, a 25 watt, depending upon what you wanted. And then we would put them on a stand, and you could put them right above the person, right to the side, and it was a very effective way to light.
In terms of the end, when we go to the narrative, cinematic portion of the film, that was actually a much different story than the style we had chosen for shooting the other stuff. The death scene is absolutely storyboarded, and we went through that. The whole set was actually built in your old place, and you and Jenny, your girlfriend, put the whole thing together, pretty much, and Heather. You guys did the whole set and with plastic and all that, and then we went through it, and I remember that you were shooting with a digital stills, and Jenny and I actually choreographed and acted out the whole scene, and we would actually put the camera where we thought we would want it, and we'd do the stills, and then once we had the whole scene worked out, we printed those stills, and in a storyboard fashion. And that worked out quite well, because then we were able to follow the storyboard, and actually as we were looking at those digital stills, we were even able to sequence our shooting day into the most convenient day where we could get the most shots done in the least amount of time. Though that scene still took 12 hours to shoot. It was a long scene, and since it was a hardwood floor, everyone was really aching at the end of the day, especially Michelle, who was great. She could hold her breath a very long time. Then the stuff out in the Pine Barrens, which was in the end, that's actually the real Pine Barrens in New Jersey. We brought a car out with a crane and VX-1000, and Ryan and Jenny and myself and you and Dave, of course, and we all went out there and shot for the day, and that was a beautiful day. The weather was perfect. The light was really nice that day, going in and out of the clouds. And I remember you would be very careful about when to shoot, and we would be like, "Come on, Dave, come driving down that road. It's perfect now." Right. That one shot, which actually made it to the film. That was the shot, that take. We shot for about 28 days, and during the course of that shooting, we would also be editing. Some things we would actually edit immediately after shooting. The final scene, the asphyxiation scene, is a good example of that. We did a rough cut of it to make sure we had all the elements needed for that scene before we broke the set down.
Ironically, 20% of the movie was created in a post environment. For instance, all the homicide and autopsy photographs that you see are actually stills of us that we then manipulate in Adobe Photoshop, where we would add all the gore effects. So it was nice because we didn't actually have to wear makeup or fake blood during the shooting of those sequences. Also, the newspaper articles and the legal documents that we have, they are all generated within the computer as well.
In those situations, we would use we would type out a story in a regular word processor, and then take those words and put them on paper backgrounds and age them electronically, and then actually do the image panning and motion that the camera would do in the movie, all digital. So they were never printed out on the paper. Basically, every frame of the movie was processed. Even though it was all shot on video and we actually wanted it to look like video, there were certain aspects that we wanted to sort of avoid. One of them is sort of a very smooth, fluid motion and almost an electric feeling that video has. And that's due to the fact that it's an interlaced image. So what we would do is we would actually de-interlace the image, and in the situations where the picture was supposed to have a low resolution look, we would actually just toss one of the fields. So we would get a more strobe-y, solid look. In the areas where we actually wanted all the resolution and where we were going to eventually mimic the look of film, we would keep both fields and turn them into essentially a progressive scanned image. And then in terms of the film look, which at the time there were no film look plugins, so we did it ourselves using Adobe Premiere and After Effects, we would create that progressive scan image and then actually manipulate the gamma to mimic that of film. The sound was done in a variety of ways. One of the situations, the 911 call, for instance, was something that Lance recorded here and then actually emailed to me so that I could listen to it and work on it, and then I would send it back and forth. So we were actually sending that sound back and forth. Other things like sound effects were mostly done using found sound near the computer. Modem sounds, for instance, were used a lot, and we used them in a variety of ways where we would actually slow them down to where You could actually hear each sample just sort of thunking away to create different sort of moods. In terms of the music, ambient sort of tracking music, Tony Rosso, the fellow who plays the detective, and myself did a lot of work there at his home studio with his synthesizers. The one thematic melody that sort of plays through the movie, which sounds like sort of like this ghostly choir, is in fact myself singing, and with lots and lots of reverb and echo, and also we just removed the attack of my voice so that it would just become a very ghostly sound. Also, the sounds of rumbling thunder and sort of roaring out in the background were actually pencils that we would actually hit against the microphone to create that sound. The idea that you can add grain or remove grain or change color or just manipulate the image so much in post, where the post process actually almost becomes an extension of the production process, is something that is very fresh and new, really, especially for the low-budget filmmaker, because post now is just sort of another place to just continue manipulating the images in terms of things you used to do in production, like lighting and etc. We had done what a lot of people said was impossible, which was to make a movie for almost no money. A movie using only consumer-based video cameras and consumer-based editing equipment.
We had talked to this very theater about premiering here. The only problem was getting the movie from here onto the big screen. Typically what you have to do is, if you shoot on digital, you have to figure out a way to transfer it to celluloid. That's normally how it's done. We didn't have the money that was needed to do that. I mean, it's usually about $40,000 to $60,000 to go to 35 millimeter, and that wasn't an option for us. So what we decided to do was try to research different projection technologies that were available. And we actually hooked up with a company called Digital Projection Incorporated, which was using state-of-the-art technology.
What we discovered when we saw the picture from that was that it was actually a better image than if we had gone to 35. So we were very happy that that was the way that we were going to show the movie. It was the best possible way to show a movie that was shot digitally. After the movie played and made its world premiere at the County Theater here in our hometown, we started going on the festival circuit. And there were a lot of festivals, and we took a digital projector to 99% of them. And it was a great way of showing the world what you can do and what the state of the art was with digital projection systems. And again, it was the only way our movie was going to be showing. So once we were playing the festivals, the all-important distributors started seeing what we were doing and started seeing our movie. And we got a couple offers to release our movie, and all those offers always required taking to celluloid. For a while, we were looking at those offers with interest, but then we decided we've made this movie for no money. We were happy with it. We had a good time with it. Why don't we see what we can do with releasing it on our own terms? We've been playing it digitally. Why should we change now?
I think it's interesting, too. Throughout the process, we were always told, no, you can't do that. We were told, no, you can't make a film on a desktop computer. You're crazy if you think you can make it for $900. You're crazy if you're not going to take it to film. There's no way you can show in festivals that way. And we just kept not listening to those things and just kept pushing through as though, you know, we were on a mission almost. You know, we wanted to go as far as we possibly could with this movie. And it became almost ironic. We wanted to keep the digital integrity to the project. Usually filmmakers will say they want to keep the integrity of the project, the celluloid. They're concerned about the film image. We were concerned about keeping it digital, which is very much, you know, not the norm.
Luckily, we weren't the only people who were thinking that. There was a guy that we had met through the festival circuit. His name was Tommy Pilata, great guy. And he introduced us to a couple other people who were also interested in sort of pushing new avenues of distribution. One of those people was Esther Robinson.
Esther Robinson had been a producer for television, and Esther came along and kind of worked with us to package what would eventually become the first international all-digital release.
Once we decided we were going to do this crazy idea of releasing a movie digitally via satellite, something that had never been done before, we became a company. We became Wavelength Releasing. And that is, to this day, the company that is the distributor of The Last Broadcast, by and large, especially theatrically. It is the only company that is releasing it theatrically. Wavelength Releasing partnered up with Cyberstar Digital Projection Incorporated, Texas Instruments, plus Weiler and IFC to act as commercial sponsors for us also. And we were lucky because through all those alliances, we actually had enough money that we were able to do all the marketing and advertising that was needed to release this movie in the way we were doing so. Plus, of course, we had the solid technical background of these companies.
What we did was we took an MPEG-2 source of the film, beamed it up to a geosynchronous platform satellite, which is 22,300 miles above Earth. From there, it came bouncing back down through satellite dishes that we put on top of each of those theaters, and from there it was downloaded onto an NT server, and then played out to a state-of-the-art digital projection system. So that marked the first all-digital release. The movie was playing as ones and zeros. It started in two parts. The first part was us releasing domestically to 5 different cities. Those cities were Portland, Oregon, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Providence, Rhode Island, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Orlando, Florida. In May of 1999, we kicked off an international electronic cinema tour, which would take us to 5 different countries. We started in the US, in New York, and then we went to the Cannes Film Festival, where we became the first film ever to show there not on celluloid. And then from there we went to London, Dublin, and then Stockholm. So it was about 4 weeks on the road with the movie, going around and kind of showing people both the film and the technology behind it, and how we were able to make it, and then also how we were distributing it entirely electronically.
As the travels were going, we had to live very tightly, and some of that was, those were experiences that, you know, looking back on them, and even then we were sort of laughing, but I hope never to go through them again. We met a lot of great people too. It was a lot of fun, and we saw a lot of exciting things.
We've traveled all over the world with the film, a movie that we had started almost as a lark, you know, between other projects, and it's great that we've been able to travel all over and have people all over the world see it. Distribution is one of the most important parts of the process. It's going to become easier to make films, but in order to find an audience for them, it's more difficult. With more productions going on, because the technology becomes more accessible, then you have overburdens on film festivals of submissions. So it really becomes a question of, how do I get my film out to an audience? And for us, the best way to do that was through digital means, you know, and hopefully that opens doors for some other people, or at least makes them think, well, if those schmoes can do it, I can do it, you know.